let's talk about an article that a lot of people are talking about, gentlemen, and that, of course, was Chris Jones from the CBC, wrote an article about lack of availability when it comes to Canadian players. He went on to talk about the Canadian Soccer Association, but then he, in particular, highlighted Alphonso Davies. As you can imagine, this is a very polarizing article. There have been many negative responses, and there's been some positive, and then there's been some, I like this, but ooh, I didn't like that type of reaction. So let me ask you this, Ollie, having read the article, do you feel the criticism of Canada Soccer and Alphonso Davies was justified?
I don't think the criticism of Alphonso Davies was justified, no. And I thought the article went too far in that regard. And I don't ever like to, attack other journalists. And I certainly don't want to be personal about this in any way. But obviously, we can all have opinions and agree and disagree. And I felt in this case that the article went too far and started to kind of cast aspersions about, Davies potentially being a problem in the group because of his level of celebrity, because of his wealth and things like that, that I feel, to be honest, unfounded and unfair. So I think sometimes what people don't get in this situation, and we all want to find a better way forward here in terms of Alphonso and the media having more of a relationship and us hearing from him more often. And, that we've gone into on this show why we think that matters. But what I think people miss sometimes is that Alphonso Davies, yes, he is of a different status to everyone else in this Canadian squad, and it's unavoidable, right? As much as you might want to treat everyone the same and keep it a level playing field for fairness reasons, you cannot avoid the fact that Alphonso Davies is a global superstar. And so there's going to be a certain amount of, firstly, the people, who manage him, trying to take care of him and trying to limit the amount of this stuff he does. There's going to be a certain amount of anxiety about what he says every time he speaks, especially in a climate like this at a World Cup where you're getting asked about this, that, and everything, right? In terms of political issues and all kinds of things that journalists want players to answer for. If Alphonso Davies says one thing that's just a little bit off, there was an instance, it was completely stupid, where he talked about Harry Maguire being captain of Manchester United and not Cristiano Ronaldo. And it's an international headline, right? And all of a sudden, Alphonso Davies is slating Harry Maguire. And it was just a silly comment in passing that he made on a live stream, right? That goes viral. So I think people need to kind of be mindful of that and aware of that when we talk about, Alphonso and how we deal with him with the media. Again, we'd all love to find a better solution here. And I think that's incumbent on journalists, on Canada Soccer, to be more prepared for this in the future as well. But I don't think attacking the player gets us anywhere. I don't think it's something that's being done maliciously on Alphonso's part to snub journalists. We don't need to do that. It's not going to help anyone or get us anywhere here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Gareth, before I come to you, I do want to go, because we are talking about the player now and maybe player perspective, Jordan. I just, wonder where you are as well on the article, how it was treated about Alphonso Davies and how it was directed at him. And then also maybe just what you've been seeing when it comes to the CSA making players available, because I think it's also worth noting that the reason why many journalists, and by the way, Chris Jones's article is the one getting the most attention, but there have been many journalists who are there who have been commenting on the lack of availability. Alphonso Davies did not speak after that game against Belgium, to the greater media after, the missed penalty, but also just a fantastic performance by Canada. And he didn't speak to the greater media after scoring a historic goal. That's what prompted this, which, by the way, many media members have commented on that. Chris Jones just wrote a little bit more of a polarizing article. So just from a player perspective as well, Jordan, how are you feeling about it?
I feel that maybe his intent was Chris was in the right spot, but I think he went too far. It was out of pocket, and there were sections in that article that for me were disrespectful. Like, the part I really want to address, there are other things, but the part I'll talk about is Alphonso Davies has worked hard for what he has. Yes, he's Canadian. Yes, we're proud of him, but he's worked hard as an athlete. To comment on what he does with his money or his earnings for a guy who shows up for Canada, does a lot for his family, I think that's out of pocket. I feel like oftentimes as a player, people have access to you because you're playing and you're supposed to do media. I believe that he should be doing that. I believe that he should be speaking out and talking and bridging the gap between media and Canada and the camp. But don't talk about his character. I feel like as if that could be, players always feel attacked when that happens. Have a conversation, sit down, but don't address stuff in the media, because people who aren't watching Alphonso Davies or who aren't maybe tuned into Canadian soccer are reading this article, and this is the truth that they're taking from it. And for me, it's speculative. It's not factual. So that's the hard part I have with it. And then I'm forgetting your second question, Andy, to be honest. You said that.
No, listen,
player, but the second part
you're on a good little rant. No, but I get what you're saying, right? There is obviously a duty. I think you are saying that as a player, right? Speaking to media, bridging the gap, especially in a country too, where as much as we are saying we're a footballing nation, it's still growing here, right? And he is the voice that can really help as well. His voice, Christine Sinclair's, like their voices really matter. But I think, we're also in agreement there that when there's a difference between criticizing the system of how things are working right now at the World Cup with the CSA and player availability, and then like attacking a player, right?
Yeah.
So, Gareth, what are your thoughts on it?
It started off as a story where the media is talking about itself. I don't like that. I'm just, there's so much. You see it on television. You see it written so much. These look like, I know your job's difficult. We've dealt with the Canadian Soccer Association for years on a regular basis. We know what it's like. I'm not throwing people under the bus or bringing my personal gripes to the forefront. It's just a way of doing it. So that didn't really speak to me. I don't blame Alphonso Davies at all for any of this. He has done everything that's been asked upon him when it comes to Canada soccer. He's played against other, inside the bubble during COVID. He showed up. He showed out. He represented Canada when we were named World Cup hosts. He interacts with his fans in a completely different way, by the way. He's of a younger generation. Like, he's more accessible than any other player through his YouTube and Twitch channels. Like, he's there all the time. I just think that Alphonso might need some advice how to navigate through these situations at times to quell the waters. And this is a learning for Canada soccer. I think there's been some crisis moments, some talking point moments over the course of this tournament, and the communication hasn't been clear enough. It hasn't been good enough. I think that Davies, unfortunately, has just caught up with something that has nothing to do with him, quite frankly. The final thing I want to say is I want Canadian soccer. I keep on saying this. As Canadian soccer fans, the public, the media, we always and continue to kill our own. We slate our own about little things, about stories where the opinion can go this direction or this direction. Like, not situations where there's clearly a target and you need to get after this because it's wrong, but these stories that could go either way, we always seem like we turn our back on the Canadian here. It's very weird for us to have that approach in the game. I feel like other nations, if you're going to go one way or the other, you try to uplift, especially at a time of important growth for the sport in this country, but we continue just to, just tear each other down. It's not just this media story, just leaves a real sour taste, Andy. And that attitude just needs to change. We need to be much more supportive. I'm not telling anyone not to write negative articles. That's not what I'm saying. But the way that we deal with situations like this, when it's not even about Alphonso Davies, it's very weird to me.